Welcome to Marin Poets Live. I'm Neshama Franklin. I work at the Fairfax Library and I love poetry. So it is a special pleasure for me to share this opportunity to introduce you to poets from our county in the flesh, as it were, as they read and discuss their work. Monthly tapings will be broadcast on Marin TV and then become part of a special page on our website, along with biographies of the poets and links to our collection. This is a partnership with the Marin Poetry Center. A common thread throughout the programs will be discovering how living in Marin has influenced their poetry. Those of you who already love poetry will appreciate this direct transmission from the poet to the listener, you. Those who might think of poetry as esoteric or abstract will discover how it can sing when read aloud. For this month's program, we will feature Karen Benke and Daniel Polikoff. And welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Neshama. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure as always. And let's start with a Marin County poem.
Okay, I brought a poem called Coming Home that was first published in Beside the Sleeping Maiden that Lynn Follett edited. Coming home. Crossing the bridge back, I look toward the mountain, remembering the lines across my father's tan face, the people he will never meet, my sleeping unborn children. Switchbacking narrow roads, I arrive at your hut and open the curtain door to the familiar scent of bamboo, green tea, woven leaves of tatami. Resting on my cushion, I watch steam rise from a glazed cup placed before me. It's here I want to gather the past into my arms, touch his face, ask him to hold me one more time. But even as I tell you this, I look across the mist-covered mountain I have climbed to this view, showing me all that I am missing, trying to live what has already been lived. It's here I see the reflection in your dark eyes, loving me, and bow.
So that is dizzying because it starts so specifically, it gets so huge, it gets all mysteriously specific, and it's elegiac and it's joyful all in the same breath. So
Thank you.
What a way
Wow.
to start.
Well, it's a poem near to my heart. I've lived in Marin for almost 23 years. And my father died the year before I moved here. So it was in part crossing the bridge back, crossing the Golden Gate Bridge,
Yes.
back to nature. I lived in San Francisco for a long time, and my father was a Zen Buddhist, and he loved nature. And so I have friends at Green Gulch. I've studied with Jane Hirschfield. I've spent time at Tassajara. They all found their way into this poem.
Yes.
Coming home.
That's why it's so much fun to get behind the scenes, as it were, because the you is such a powerful you, and who is this you? And I wouldn't have known, except viscerally, who the you was, unless you had read it. Another poem, please.
Okay. Well, this is a poem called What I Believe, and it's after a poem by a poet named Melody Lucina. She wrote a book called Private Hunger, and I was just intrigued by her voice, so I wrote this in What I Believe. I believe the color orange will one day find its rhyme, and that sleeping past 9 is required for the dreamer's soul. I believe apples need to be crisp, pears soft, served with a side of walnuts. I don't believe in threats. I don't believe the people who make them aren't scared. I don't believe neighbors should trim back too many trees. I believe in the change of seasons, in the way children call out for one more drink of water after being tucked into flannel sheets. I would never name a pet sweetie. I would never yell fire in a crowded theater. I would never yell in a theater. What I believe in is simple. Practice being kind, take long walks, appreciate the smell of sautéed onions and how your grandmother taught you to make lentil soup. Don't take your heartbeat for granted. Trust that you can no more choose who you love than you can choose to take your next breath. When we're not all so busy forgetting, may we remember we're all in this together. None of us get out alive.
What a manifesto. I want it on my fridge because I believe many of those things, although I like pears hard. But that's my strangeness.
Yes. I like bananas hard,
Yes.
so there we go.
All right. I just love this so much. Keep going with poems.
Okay, this is fun. So, well, today's Valentine's Day, so I brought a poem called Toward an Explanation of the Birds and the Bees. And it starts with a little epigraph by the poet Gregory Orr, a little 2-line. If we're not supposed to dance, why all this music? So this is a conversation that I had with my now 12-year-old son, but we had it about 4 or 5 years ago, toward an explanation of the birds and the bees. Out of the blue, he says he loves birds, then asks about the crickets. I explain how, when they rub their legs together, it's the boy cricket singing love songs to the girl. This is the conversation I've been waiting for. Stars dance around the moon. From the bedroom window, we watch his cat prowl to the creek. He tells me Clive has a new friend. That's where they meet. Before I can add anything else, he says, "Hey, Mom, do bees ever sleep or sneak away from their hive? I mean, aren't they supposed to stick around to protect the queen?" I tuck him deeper into the folds of his comforter and explain how we can Google this in the morning. I assure him it's fine to have a crush. There's plenty of time for girls and all that stuff. Who said anything about girls, Mom? I'm asking you about bees.
That's great. And I love the way the domestic the playful domestic finds its way into your poems.
Thank you. Well, my 12-year-old son, Colin, has been my muse since he was born, and we spent a lot of time at home together, and that's where I found subject matter for many of my poems.
How does he feel about you as poet?
It's interesting. He, I think, is very proud of me, and he always wanted me to come into his classroom. I teach with California poets in the schools. I've done this for a number of years, and I always would come into his class. And now he's in middle school, so I thought, well, those days are over, pretty much. He won't let me drive on the field trips, and I wanted to help clean up the marsh one day with his class. He said, absolutely not. And then in the next breath he said, but Miss Rowan wants to know if you want to come do poetry in our class, so you can. And I thought, wow, he still wants me to do that.
Poetry as a key through that closed door of adolescence.
Yes, they want the real. They are hungering for the real.
Yes.
And they, of course, love humor.
Yeah.
So the combination of the two. But poetry is, I just thought it was interesting. You won't let me drive on the field trip, but you'll let me to get into everyone's hearts and souls in your class. Okay.
Yes. Another poem, please.
Okay. So this is a poem called I'll Tell You a Secret, and I published it under another name, Katrina Trelawney. She's my alter ego.
Yes.
And so in some of my books, my books on creative writing for kids, Rip the Page and Leap Right In, I always manage to slip in a Katrina Trelawney poem. And even my editor at Shambhala doesn't know that I'm Katrina Trelawney. So I'm telling you for the first time. I'll tell you a secret. Poems hide, and it's our job to find them. Look around, wherever you are. At a park, in a car, picking wildflowers on the side of the road. At home, cleaning your room or eating a slice of peach pie. Don't be shy. You're alive. Ask yourself what you most need to find. Look straight up into your own patch of sky. Breathe in the lake, count the bees as they hover among blossoming trees. In the middle of the night, rise from your bed, walk through the quiet of each painted room. Outside, bend to rest your palms on the moist ground. Invite in the clouds, the slivered moon. Listen to your heartbeat, if you can. Are you brave enough? Of course you are. Now pick up a pen, write it all down.
You are such a cheerleader for, I mean, in the best sense, of all these direct suggestions. Do it, do it, do it. So that must really be part of your mainspring, because we're always talking to ourselves as well as out there.
Well, when I go into the classrooms, Neshama, especially with the third graders and the fourth graders, we root each other on.
Yes. Right. There is yes in every single one of these poems.
I have a lot of other poems that don't necessarily say yes, but today I wanted the yes poems with you.
It's Valentine's Day.
It's Valentine's Day.
We got a little rain. That's great. We have about less than 3 minutes left.
Okay.
So You want to slip a dark one in, or
Let's see. Oh, sure, I'll slip a dark
And by
one
the
in.
way, I love your nom de plume. It's kind of a little steampunk, you know, a little romance.
Yes. Okay, how about I slip in what we fear? We all fear something. Is it loss we fear? The child's rabbit innocence, a beloved's final breath, or what follows? The long mornings, the mind's delicate trap of never again. The eye adjusts to what the ear hears. Meanwhile, the heart feels everything. Absence of snake, disappearance of moon. Is it silence we seek, or right after? The hawk in mid-flight, wind through black feathers, the mouse caught or not. See how the meadow wakes, overgrown with yarrow and trillium. The buzz and hum, a simple brilliance. Winter gone, spring without grasping.
So dark shot through with light. It's just because that's who you are.
Yeah, you know, I spent a lot of time writing poems of grief. In fact, my first book, Sister, was an entire book filled with that. And grief acknowledgement.
Yes.
And that's part of life. And right now, I'm just so enjoying reading and writing poems that bring in the light, more light.
And we need it, and we can use it. I'm a dark person, but I turn toward light like a flower, and here you are giving it to me. 59 minutes. What do you have?
59 minutes or seconds?
50 seconds.
That would be fun.
That was wishful thinking.
Well, how about if I end with a poem called Joyride? It appeared in the Buddhist edition of Rattle magazine not too long ago.
Okay.
And it's imagining taking a car ride with relatives who are dead. Joyride. I tell my son, I wish I didn't have to go to work today. He says he wishes he didn't have to go to school. He's tired of darkening in right answer bubbles. I ask what we'd do if we could play hooky, and he says we'd go through the tunnel and pick up Nana Friday, wondering if people who died can come too. You know, like Grandpa Don and Annie Toots. So we pile into the VW and veer over the center line of what reality doesn't allow. I accelerate past the turnoff to his school, my father cautioning me to slow down as my aunt sings a Lou Rawls song she knew. Traveling an unnamed highway of light, no longer concerned about getting anywhere on time, we pass around baggies of sliced apples and almonds, my father nodding his handsome face at the grandson he never knew who wants details about where he's been. So I lean in to listen. Oh, pretty much everywhere, Angel, he assures, explaining there aren't any tests or distance where he is now. You just love who you love, and that's the right answer to everything.
And this has been a joy ride with you, Karen. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
So glad you're here.
Very pleased to be here.
Good. Will you start with a Marin poem?
I certainly will. This is a brief one. It's a bit of an ars poetica. I live in Mill Valley, and as you may know, in the springtime, the bluffs above Muir Beach are filled with heather. And this poem derives from that. It's called Brushstroke. The heather on the hillside, how wholly it covers the ground with glory, as if that cataract of mauve were the breaking of the earth's heart into song. What if I could spill sense just so passionately from the slim branch I am holding in my hand?
Tell me about ars poetica.
Well,
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yes.
It's kind of your poetic credo. So it's a poem that speaks about the writing of poetry and your personal relationship
thank
to
you.
it in some way.
I've never heard it or had it defined so beautifully.
Yes.
And I love this. I'm going to use the word old-fashioned in the very best sense.
Yes.
That there's that kind of resonance, I think, of, the poets, the bards. There's a bard in
Oh,
you,
good.
I believe.
That came through already,
It
huh?
came through
I'm
already.
very old-fashioned and
Yeah, I
romantic
love
when
it.
it comes to poetry.
Yes, so now give us another.
Well, this is another botanical Marin poem. It's called Eucalyptus, a plant generally I'm not so fond of, but that's good to write about as well. Eucalyptus. I cannot stop thinking about the crowns of the eucalyptus, those lanky foreigners ubiquitous round here, and most always tallest. I do not love their half-naked trunks, or the way their shining scimitar-shaped leaves litter the ground, cutting off all other growth. But how their elastic uppermost limbs sway wildly in the wind, so high above everything else, as if, hair streaming, they were teenagers doing some crazy disco number on the floor of heaven, half ecstatic to be feeling the vibes, the breath of beings far greater than we, and going with it, dancing up there on some invisible tightrope with no fear of falling so far down.
So that's a kind of push me, pull you poem. You embrace and you shove away,
Yes.
and it creates a wonderful tension in there. So I keep hearing, what is your accent? You have an accent. Is it? Where did you grow up?
Chicago.
Chicago. But it kind of sounds a little like from across the pond, and it also sounds a little like East Coast. But it's your reading voice, it's your poetry voice, perhaps.
Many people comment that I have some kind of
Yeah.
strange accent.
It's not strange, it's just arresting.
Yes,
It's
okay.
great, which is why speaking poems out loud is so exciting.
Yeah.
And so keep going,
All right.
if you would.
Well, the eucalyptus made reference to teenagers, and I actually have one.
Ay.
My son Hayden is now 14 years old. My daughter Allison is 21. She's over the hill on that. But Hayden is in this poem, and it's another local poem. This one set at Crissy Field, and perhaps a character some people may recognize. It's called Crab Man, Crissy Field. He casts another crab trap far out into the bay, then props the heavy pole on the jutting pier. Just behind, Hayden and I stare into a bucket crawling with big reds. You young fellers ever do any crabbing yourselves? Wiry, weathered skin taut as a tether, he sidles over. Looky here. He stoops, holds up a neat metal contraption, bait cage, catch loops, tail of heavy lead sinkers. Invented 'em myself, 14 years to get it right. And so we hear the crab man's version of the local fishing news, how two fierce tides can make bad traps jump like beans on the bottom, why you need to reel in after 4 or 5 minutes, 10 or 15, these here claws will rip the cage to shreds. How 700-pound sea lions, pissed 'cause they can't get at the squid meat, lie on traps, crushing them like sardine cans. A few yards down the pier, a burly guy whoops and grins, hauling in 2 keepers snared in the loops of the trap bought just minutes ago. The crab man nods and shines. See there, that's job satisfaction. Making things that make folks happy. Making things that work.
I love it. And it has kind of jazzy, punchy crabman music in it.
Yeah.
So it's different from your other poems.
Yeah.
So you have embraced the crabman
Yes.
and brought him to us. Hayden for the composer or Hayden for the what?
Good question. Actually, the name is to some degree made up. We were searching for a male name and had a very difficult time finding one. And I saw a book of poems by Hayden Carruth. And ignorant at the time, I thought it was pronounced Haydn, and I suggested that name to my wife, Monica, who loved it. And so we decided on the name Haydn. When we found out that Hayden was really Hayden, we took the A out. And
I love it.
that's...
And how does he feel about his unusual name?
I think he feels fine about it. It's a unique name, and it's not too difficult to say.
No,
so.
that's great.
He does get called Hayden a fair bit, but...
Yes. Yeah. Another poem.
Good.
Keep them coming.
Well, I mentioned my wife, Monica, and seeing that today is Valentine's Day, I think I'm going to read a poem that honors that fact and her. This is from a little while ago. It also has Napa is in there, so we're still neighboring Marin. It's called After Forever, for Monica. How can I love you as well as when I didn't know you, and your face was mine to imagine? The way the beautiful stranger strikes us. I remember seeing a girl for the first time, like a left hook to the stomach. How can I see you again like that? Though it wasn't you, really, just a god breaking into time. But that's nothing next to marriage. Sure, we hung the Bougereau over our bed, winged Psyche and Eros ascending, but there's the hamper in the corner. Myths little better than the movies sometimes. You seldom see the young couple after, and if you do, it's disaster. I'd love to get away to heaven with you and sip divine ichor, but we have to settle for Napa once a year when my sister takes the kids. Still, as we lay in bed among the late afternoon shadows, time drops away looking into your face. Remember in Coleridge's Frost at Midnight, the boy far from home, and how stranger takes on a second uncanny sense, the filmy ash fluttering on the grate after the dying fire, foretelling the coming of sister, cousin, kindred soul. Odd how stranger doubles back, enfolding mystery and memory, far and near, like these, your topaz eyes.
I love, there's always that feeling when, not always, but when you have embraced someone and then you wonder who they are. That strangeness of the person possibly closest to you.
Yes.
And you've gotten it in there. And I also love that visceral punch to the gut, right in the middle of the poem, because that's where this stuff, a lot of it lives. So what's hanging over your bed? What is that thing?
Bougereau's famous painting of Psyche and Eros.
Okay, Bougereau.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cupid and Psyche.
Yes.
So
a short poem because we have a little time left, but just a little.
Let me see if I can read one more on the similar theme. Obad, which means a poem greeting the morning. And this is on the Valentine's Day theme as well. I wake this morning to the sight of color seeping into the canvas of the heavens. The way the dark meets lightness like a lover so long desired, there is no real time for any kind of formal greeting. No quick acknowledgement of otherness before the serious business of love begins, the subtle blending, the almost invisible turning of one into the other, as if the shade they make together is all that really matters. Romantic cliché, perhaps, but there it is, unfolding before my naked eyes, dawn breaking and lovers parting, leaving me and this child blue day behind.
That is a beautiful thing to leave behind with us, because we are done. And thank you so much, Daniel Polikoff, for being with us.
Thank you very much.